live. It is Friday, and thank God for that. August, what is it, 7th?
Yes.
2020. To the people on YouTube, or the one obnoxious person on YouTube who is sniping that we're late again. I'm drinking a beer in the garden and on the porch, the nearly finished deck at the cabin in the woods. And men all over the world are sending cauliflower recipes to my co-host, Kate Klonick, who has something to say about it. Kate, the floor is yours on this one.
Okay, so if you don't follow me on Twitter, which is completely understandable, yesterday, I feel like I have to explain this, because otherwise it's just going to be kind of like an inside joke for the people that watch it. Anyways, I tweeted, I have Google, no children, a career, and a head of cauliflower, and all I want is one easy recipe, and instead everything involves 6 pans and 12 more ingredients and a sous vide, and honestly, how do people live like this? And it was just like supposed to be like a kind of like a like random and like just like stupid like rant about finding recipes on the internet, kind of, but also more kind of meta, not about recipes at all. The more meta thing was just basically that, like, I don't know, it was like self-mocking about all of like this time.
Note, people of the Y chromosomes, that one thing that tweet did not request is recipes from you. And yet, what happened, Kate?
And so all of a sudden, I put this tweet up at, like, I don't know, shortly after the show ended yesterday. And I look back at it like 30 minutes later, and it's weirdly been retweeted and gone viral and like all of this stuff. And as it's like getting more and more likes and it's going around the internet and getting retweeted, people are just like sending me all of these cauliflower recipes. Okay, so there's recipes, right? That was like one thing. That was like, okay, maybe someone has a favorite cauliflower recipe. I get it. But really, what really got me was like people explaining to me, mostly men, how to cut up and roast cauliflower with olive oil and salt and pepper in my own goddamn oven. And I was like, no, I know how to cook cauliflower. This wasn't a tweet about knowing how to cook cauliflower. Like, I'm a very capable person. And like, I kind of was like, well, these people are just trying to be nice and help me. And so I started to like reply, like, thank you. This is not about cauliflower. This is not about cauliflower. This is not about cauliflower. Like, to every person that like took the time to type out to me, like, how to cook cauliflower. And like, they kind of I just got a little angrier and angrier as I did each one. And they ended up slowly becoming all caps. And then, which then resulted in me just retweeting myself in all caps saying, fools, infidels, I know how to cook cauliflower. Cauliflower is not the point. Anyways, the whole thing my entire night ended up becoming like watching the reply to this tweet and laughing, and watching my friends reply to it and laughing, and it just being, I mean, you texted me at one point and then you retweeted something about it, and it was just like, it just took over my Twitter feed for it. Anyways, it was just like bizarre and random, and kind of one of the things I love about the internet.
So, if there are still males out there who want to explain to Kate how to cut up a cauliflower and roast it, and exactly how much salt and pepper she needs, her Twitter handle is at Klonick, and you can send her that much needed information, and I'm sure she will appreciate it. All of which brings me to, oh wait, we're not allowed to have fun anymore. But in lieu of fun, we have my mom. Hi, Mom.
Hi.
Oh, turn down the volume.
Low.
The whole thing about it being, you got to keep it low because the feedback is coming from the speaker into your mic, and that's what's creating that feedback noise. Hi, Mom.
Hi. Is that
Much
Nice.
better?
better. Yes,
Yeah,
it's so nice to meet you.
you're echoey, but it's fine.
Okay.
As long as you keep your voice low and don't turn up your volume. I want to tell everybody a funny story about my mom um, and the great political scientist Steve Krasner at Stanford. So
Ooh.
the first time I ever gave a lecture at Stanford was about Guantanamo. And my point in this talk, I started the talk by quoting my mom because my mom has a great line, which I believe she coined to dismiss the entire field of clinical psychology, which was all the data prove all the hypotheses. And you have to imagine that said with disgust, like, oh, you can't take that seriously. All the data prove all the hypotheses. And this was, of course, true of the Guantanamo population, that whatever you wanted to see in the population, you would find a way to see. And so that was how I started the talk. And I credit it to my mom, and I said, it's the dream of every Jewish boy to start a talk at Stanford by quoting his mother. So I did. And unbeknownst to me, Steve Krasner spent the entire time of my talk looking through my mom's CV, and which he'd pulled up on the internet during the talk. And Steve is an intimidating guy. I mean, he's a total sweetheart and he's a very brilliant man, but he's a kind of intimidating guy, and I didn't know him that well at the time. And so it comes around time for the first question. And the first question goes to Steve Krasner, and I'm like, oh shit, Steve Krasner is going to ask me a tough question. And he says, so, Ben, I've been reviewing your mother's publications while you've been talking, and this is an incredible publication list. She's amazingly impressive. What happened to you?
Oh my God.
And this is the first question I ever received from an audience at Stanford. And I burst out laughing. And so, yeah, welcome to In Lieu of Fun, Mom. Can
Awesome.
you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear? This is very bizarre. Can you hear me now?
Oh, we can hear you
You're
just
good.
fine. In fact, we can hear you more than once. But we've gotten it down to just a few times very close together, so it's okay now. So, my mom is, who actually does have a name. Her name is Janet Turk Wittes, and she is a statistician who designs clinical trials, which we used to have a joke in the family that my dad would run for president because he's a clinical oncologist and everybody always wants to talk about cancer. And so the slogan was going to be cancer is the issue. But nobody jokes about, like, now today clinical trials is the issue. All anybody wants to talk about is clinical trials. So uh Mom, give us a sense of where everybody's talking about, there'll be a vaccine by uh, X and such a date, depending on who you are. Um, uh, how plausible, these are lightning speeds from a drug approval point of view. How realistic is it to think that we will have real efficacy and safety data as quickly as early next year or late this year?
So I was afraid you were going to ask me this.
Yeah, we'll start with the downer question.
Yeah, right. Okay, so prediction is hard, especially about the future. Normally, with a vaccine trial, with development of vaccines can take about a decade. So we're talking about cutting the time by a factor, a 20th of the time. So what do you have to do to show a vaccine? You have to show that it works, i.e., that it prevents disease, and two, that it's safe to give to healthy people, right? It's not, so safety in vaccine trials is pretty important. You don't want to give, when you have a disease and you take a treatment, it can have a certain amount of adverse effects because the benefit is really great for the individual. But with the vaccine, where you're giving it to now, the idea would be to give it to 70% of the population of the world. If it has a small, really bad adverse effect, that's a lot of people. So safety is an issue that I don't think has been discussed very much, or I haven't seen it in the discussions of these vaccines. The other thing is, so when you look at a vaccine like a measles vaccine, that protects, if two people are exposed to measles, which is very infective, the person who has the vaccine, the probability of getting the measles will be about 2% of the probability of the person that has the vaccine. I'm sorry, that doesn't have the vaccine. So you're talking about highly effective vaccines. With the COVID vaccines, we're talking about, instead of 2%, 30%. So the probability is reduced. You're not going to be completely protected, but the probability of your getting COVID-19 when you're exposed to it will be reduced.
So that's like the flu vaccine.
Flu vaccine. So flu is complicated because every year the flu changes. It goes to Latin America and then it goes across the ocean it goes to south and the north hemisphere, right? And they figure out what strain it's going to be and then design the vaccine against the strains that they think are going to come. And the efficacy can be 50%, 60%, that kind of range. In a year where there's a bad match, it could be 30%. So it's very variable. But they're aiming for, I think the rule of thumb now is 70% efficacy and 70% of the population has to take it. That will lead to herd immunity and the leveling off, the dramatic leveling off of the disease. But the question you asked was when it was going to be done. I know people are saying by the time of the election. I don't think so.
No, I wasn't asking when it was going to be done. I was asking, is there any precedent for vaccine trial to be completed in matters of months rather than people were originally saying 18 months was an ambitious goal, but now they're talking about early next year, late this year. It's less than 18 months. It just seems fantastical to me.
Well, I don't think there's a precedent. I also don't think there's been a vaccine where so many people are working at it. There's a lot of knowledge about coronaviruses. So, and people are trying vaccines of all different types. So I think the fact that there hasn't been a history of such rapid development, doesn't necessarily mean that there can't be rapid development, but this would be unique, I think.
All right, I'm going to turn it over to Kate because you and I kind of know each other, and she'll have more interesting questions than I will. But before I do, I want to just pose one other question that came up the other day, which I know is one that you've thought a lot about, which is how badly, quite apart from the coronavirus trials themselves, how badly is the pandemic impacting other trials, particularly long-term trials of other matters? You're involved in a lot of clinical trials covering, a lot of different fields. How screwed up is everything because patients can't access, uh, studies can't access their subject patients over long periods of time?
Oh, that's a really good question. So I'm involved in lots of trials where the trial is going along as it's supposed to go, and all of a sudden COVID hits. And so the participants in the trials can't come to the clinic because the clinics are treating patients, or the patients don't want to come. So you have to take the measurements by phone, or come to the person's house and take a measurement. Um, if the treatment has to be done in the hospital, can't be done. So there's all kinds of trials that have been screwed up by coronavirus. And also the inference from the trials is going to be unclear. There's a period before, so if a trial is going on before coronavirus, and then through coronavirus, and then in the period after, whatever that is. Those are sort of three periods of, of the way the participants in the trial are being treated and their exposures to another disease. And the question is, well, do you analyze them in three different pieces? Do you analyze them as, oh, in this city, the coronavirus wasn't there, so we include those data, but in this city it was? And since we don't know what the post-coronavirus situation will be like, is the information you get from these studies before coronavirus hit, is it relevant to the post? We don't know.
Yeah, I think that that's super interesting. I think the long-term effects of that are huge. I think that like we haven't like just, I mean, figuring out what to do with the data, whether, what to do, just as you said, what to do with all of the data and the trials that were in the midst of being collected, but just like the ones that aren't going to start and aren't even being contemplated right now because we put all of our energies into fighting COVID and COVID trials, like the effect that that will have on scientific development of all other types of diseases, I think is kind of devastating. So this is so interesting to have the chance to kind of talk to someone who really knows this inside and out. There's been a lot of, there's always that kind of like joke, like, well, I guess it's not specifically about vaccines, but you can have something safe, you can have something effective, and you can have something fast, but you can only have two at a time, like, but pick two. And so like um, the, you know, if there was going to be one trade-off of like what didn't get taken care of um in like the vaccine trials in order, like which do you think, like what do you see happening? Do you see it like we're just not going to get it as fast as we want it? We're not going to get it as safe. We're going to get it fast, but we just won't be safe. Or it's like you think that maybe there's a possibility that it won't be effective.
It's hard to predict. And I'm actually having a hard time hearing. So it's a combination of the difficulty of prediction and hearing.
You can turn up the volume when you're not speaking.
Okay.
It's only when you're speaking that you can't.
Okay. So, Kate, can you ask the question again? And I'll turn up the volume so I can hear you.
Yeah. So with the vaccines, we have, there's, I guess I'm being told I think that everyone's telling me that this is a Coolidge quote. You can have something be safe, you can have it be effective, or you can have it fast, pick two. And this is kind of like if you had to predict, like I'm not asking you for like when this is going to happen or whatever, but if there was like a trade, if one of those things wasn't going to happen, which would it be? Do you think we won't have, like, we might get a fast and safe vaccine that does absolutely nothing? Do you think that we're going to get, it's just going to be another 18 months before we have any type of vaccine at all, because of concerns over safety and efficacy? Or do you think that we're going to have something that's really like effective for some people and has like really deleterious side effects that we couldn't have predicted for others?
I don't.
You're
Okay.
good.
Okay. I think we're going to be able to identify effectiveness, because the assumption will be that these people are figuring out where to go, right? You need to go to a place. When you're doing a trial of a disease like this, you have to go to where the disease is. It's like Willie Sutton. You go to you rob banks because that's where the money is. You go to places where the disease is. If you have an effective vaccine, I'm saying a 70% effective vaccine, you will see that. You'll do it. The trials are like 30,000 people. I mean, these are big trials, randomized 1-to-1 to the test vaccine or placebo. Sometimes some of them are randomized a little different. There'll be 2 different doses in the placebo. And if you have a place where the disease is rampant, you'll count the cases, and you'll be able to identify efficacy, I think. Safety with vaccines is very complicated, because there's the immediate effect, right? And your arm hurts or something like that. Those are the easy things to measure. A question is, how do you know that something bad has happened in the long term? Very hard to know. And there are other issues that are coming up. Should this be a one-time vaccine? Do you need 2 doses? What should the dose be? What should the interval be between the time of the first immunization and the subsequent one? So these are all things that are unknown, and that in the usual development of vaccines, these are studied over a course of years. So I think your question is right, that we'll know something. I don't believe a vaccine that is not effective will get approved. I think it will be effective, but how effective, whether it's the right dose, I don't know that we'll know.
Hydroxychloroquine. The president keeps talking about it. I don't want to talk about it, but the president keeps talking about it. So as long as he is, I guess we have to. How clear is the data that you are more likely to die on hydroxychloroquine than off of it?
Okay, those data are not clear. What is clear is hydroxychloroquine doesn't benefit you.
I see.
But it is not clear whether there's an increase in mortality or not.
And what about remdesivir? Remdesivir is now as Trump would say, people are saying that it's very effective, or that it has some significant benefit. What do the data look like on remdesivir?
Right there. Remdesivir has been studied in much smaller studies. Hydroxychloroquine has been studied in a very large study in England, the recovery trial. Remdesivir, so I think we don't really know the effectiveness of remdesivir. There are a bunch of studies going on. It is clearly, I think the evidence is pretty strong that it is effective in reducing the severity of the disease, but I don't think we know yet about its effect on mortality.
So you don't usually talk about trials that you're actively involved in, but how much are you willing to say about what what your what your level of engagement with this subject is.
Okay, I can tell things that are public about recovery, I can tell you. So I'm on the data monitoring committee for recovery, and that's public. I won't say anything that isn't public.
Okay, but what is recovery and what is a data monitoring committee?
I was going to tell you. So when a study is done of a disease that's a serious disease or a fragile population, or an endpoint that's really important, study goes on, typical study, the people who are running the study don't know the results, right? In the ideal situation, they don't know the results. But you can't let a study keep on going for a long time without having somebody watching the data and making sure that people are safe. So the DSMB is that body. It's a body that's independent of the sponsor organization, which may be the government or it may be a company. It's independent of the investigators, and it's disinterested. So it looks at the data and it tries, as it's going on, and tries to make sure that the participants in the trial, who are volunteers, are safe. So I'm on that committee for the recovery trial, which is the British trial. That's a platform trial. It's studying a series of different treatments, and it as the study learns about a treatment, like it learned about hydroxychloroquine doesn't work, stop randomizing to that. That's thousands of people in that trial. It's basically run in England by the National Health Service hospitals enter people, and it's Oxford University, the people who are running it there. I think it's a fabulous trial, and the answers are going to be really clear because the data trial is large and simple, and the endpoint is mortality. So it's very clear results. Some of the other studies are small, and it's hard to know. They're asking different questions, but I'm involved in studies in COVID as small as about 20 people. Those are studies that are looking at mechanism, and 200 people looking at effect, and then this trial of thousands of people.
So,
go ahead, Kate.
Okay, so I was going to ask a quick. Oh.
Mute mom. Okay, Mom, you can turn your volume up while Kate's asking questions.
There you go. So we're going to go and ask we have a ton of questions from the audience. This is super wonderful. So before I'm going to take the prerogative of moderator and ask my question first, which is that I'm super curious. You made the everyone's constantly comparing this to measles or smallpox or influenza. Influenza, of course, itself a coronavirus, so maybe the most similar in terms of well, not most similar, but like similar in some ways in terms of maybe how the development of this vaccine is going to happen. But I'm actually, to that point, maybe I'm totally wrong. I'm curious, like when they ran the measles vaccine, how long did it take them? How many people did they test? Like, how were they doing that type of thing? Is that even a relevant question, or does it really depend on the type of virus and the type of thing that you're kind of trying to create a vaccine for? And I guess my last question, or my last kind of tag on to that is there kind of it doesn't really, with the coronavirus, it doesn't quite make sense to me how they're doing these 30, if they're testing this vaccine, how they just can be certain that people are getting consistent exposure to coronavirus. Like, it seems like right now, ethically, like people are obviously isolating from each other. If I volunteered for the study and took the vaccine, I'd be sitting in my apartment or like my house by myself for the next 6 months, more or less. So really you wouldn't get any good data out of me, right? Because like I would, I wouldn't be at risk for even contracting the virus. And so I'm just, to that extent, is there any type of is there any type of replication that is helpful to humans that they can do in animals or other types of things that you can make sure that they're exposed to the virus without like ethical constraints?
So, so I go. I have to put
Gotta turn your volume down.
But how can I talk with my volume? Oh! I got it. I get it. Like this.
I'm controlling whether they can hear you.
Okay.
You control what you can hear.
There are certain trials, first, your question about measles. I don't really know the history of measles vaccines. I'll tell you a little story about polio vaccine, but that's a different story. In trials where the disease is not fatal, you do challenge trials. A challenge trial means that you give the patient the disease, and you randomize them to placebo or to vaccine, and you expose them, and you see whether the vaccine people are protected. As Ben knows, with malaria, the way you do it is you take a bunch of mosquitoes that are infected, and you put them in a cup, and you put the cup on the volunteer's arm, and they bite you, and you get malaria if you didn't get the vaccine. And unfortunately, for many vaccines, you get malaria. For many tested vaccines, you get malaria even when you did get the vaccine.
I just want to say that when my mother's company was new,
in flu, they take an attenuated version of flu vaccine, so not of the flu organism, not the one that we would get in the wild. And that's what they do in other diseases where they do attenuated versions. You can't do that with COVID, although there are some people that are saying we should. I don't see how you can. Because it is fatal, or it is a high probability of being fatal, so that you can't do. There are some vaccines where they test it only in animals, and the hope is that the animal model will be good enough, but those are very, very infrequent. So I don't see any way of doing it except in the human trial. It's called a field trial. And you're right, if you go to a place where everybody's careful, there's going to be no cases. So you have to go to a place where the disease is rampant and people are not careful. At this point, I think where you go is Mexico and Brazil, and hope that they get other presidents so that their presidents will change their view. But it is a problem. Where do you go? Because you can't learn about the vaccine, its efficacy, unless there are cases that occur in the control group.
Yep. I just want to quickly say that I said influenza was a coronavirus. I do know that influenza is not a coronavirus. I was thinking of MERS, SARS, but I just mentioned the flu, and then anyway, sorry. I apologize. Sorry that there's no confusion. Ben, do you want to read the first question?
No, I put you in charge of all questions from the audience, because many of them involve me having a conflict of interest and not necessarily wanting my mother to answer these questions.
Okay, so just nod, Janet, like yes or no. Do you want to do a fun mix of questions about Ben about his childhood and funny stories and questions about clinical trials? Or yes, you do? Okay, great. This is awesome.
Kate, when we have your mother on, just remember it's payback time.
My mom isn't this cool, and there's no way.
Your mom's a judge.
Yeah,
she should come on in lieu of fun. Come on.
That's like exactly the point. She would just yell at us, and I just don't. Oh my God. Okay. So yes, I agree with John. You're stalling, Ben. So let's see. I'm gonna close my eyes and like roll my mouse scroll wheel, and I'm landing on. Let's see. The FDA Oh, this is
Yeah, I like this question.
this one.
Go for it.
The FDA appears to be compromised. See hydrochloroquine. What inference can we draw about their ability to stand up to political pressure to approve something before it is time? That's a good question.
So look, I think the FDA is doing a fabulous job. It's really been pressured in all kinds of ways, and it often is pressured in all kinds of ways. Even when we don't have a president like this, it's pressured by congressmen, it's pressured by senators, it's pressured by groups, disease groups. So and this is very difficult. Now, why it approved hydroxychloroquine when it did, I don't know. But they pulled back the approval.
What about CDC?
I can't.
What about CDC? CDC's performance seems wholly beneath the purported quality of the agency. And I'm curious whether you think there's more to be said for CDC's performance than is obvious from the news. Turn down your volume.
I don't know.
I want to just say that
you all know as well as I do. You can read the paper. It looks sometimes it looks like people are compromised. Sometimes it looks like they're not. They're fighting. They're in a very, very hard position. So I can't answer that.
Life under this president as a federal bureaucrat trying to do serious work is hard, whether you're at CDC, FDA, or the FBI, or the Department of Homeland Security Intelligence and Analysis Unit. It is all the same problem. And see all prior episodes of In Lieu of Fun. Kate.
Okay, the next question might require you to think a little. So if you need a moment to think of something, then we can wait and go to another question. You can like ruminate in the back of your mind. But someone, Catherine Maddox asks, and it has gotten 10 votes and 4 comments of people wanting this question. Mrs. Wittes, please share a funny story about being Ben's mom. It should be E.G. Phillips adds, it should be appropriately embarrassing, illuminating, and Catherine Maddox follows up to say, yes, tell us, was Ben prone to shooting things in the backyard? So you can answer, or if you want to think about it, we can give you some time.
I am unembarrassed by anything I may have ever shot in the backyard.
What did you say?
I said I'm unembarrassed by anything I may have shot in the backyard.
The backyard was New York City. There was very little to shoot. What was embarrassing about Ben?
Just get right to it.
I want the record to reflect that was not the question.
Was the question? Kate, what was the question?
A funny or embarrassing or interesting or illuminating story about Ben.
Yeah,
I guess embarrassing was in there.
When, it's very hard to there are lots of memories about Ben, and when his father and I will say things that he said, he'll say, I never said that. So we're not sure. My husband and I are now at an age when we have shared memories. Some of the shared memories are exactly the same. Some of the shared memories are completely different from each other, and we're both very certain. And then the memories that we have are, Ben will say, no, that didn't happen. Or our daughter Naomi will say, no, that didn't happen. Or our son Jeremy will say, no, it didn't happen. I guess the thing I remember the most about Ben was, well, I remember lots of things, but how you hated school. And
really?
That was,
oh yeah.
No matter, even when you really like the teacher or you really like the subject or really like the assignment, you hated school. So that
I would never have guessed that. You were really like
I
all
was a
the, did you not?
terrible I was a terrible student. I did not do my homework. And look, I do not have, as a general matter, imposter syndrome at all. But when I go into teach students at the Harvard Law School, a school that I never could have gotten into under any circumstances, I am overcome by imposter syndrome, and I'm terrified of these 2L law students who are, and it is all because I was a bad student who hated school, and these are all the good kids who were good at school.
What was it that you hated then? Did you hate like
All
did
of
you
it.
all of it? You hated the whole Jeez. Did you have friends at school?
Yeah, I mean half of my high school class has been on in lieu of fun. I
Yeah,
it
that's
was
true.
like Jordan Ellenberg and Josh Sharfstein and no, it's not that. I just didn't like school. I wasn't good at it, and you know and it is a very interesting fact that when you are not good at school, um, you it is not until you get out of school that you realize what you are good at, because your whole life is being less good at things than your peer group is. And then, you get out of school and all of a sudden all these skills that you have that aren't valued in school turns out are valued in life. Like, for example, the ability to report a story, which is, just not something that is valued as a ninth grader. But the ability to ask good questions and find the right people to ask those questions to, that's a really like valuable thing, and it turns out to be very marketable. But I had no idea of that while I was in school. So yeah, I mean, my mother knows me well.
I think
Um,
that's it's
wait, let me turn on your mic, Mom, before you say something.
Seems to be.
Wait,
So
start again, Mom, because you were muted.
then when he wrote, the words, you're supposed to write your sentences so the left is like this and the right is like this. It was all over the place. And I remember one
that's not
report that he wrote on Genghis Khan. Wasn't it Genghis Khan?
See, I have no memory of
It was
this.
just, it was a total mess. The spelling was wrong and this everything, but it was gripping. It was just gripping.
I
And
still can't spell.
what?
I still can't spell.
Oh, but you see, your father and I are very good spellers. We're very careful keeping the left hand and the right hand right. So we were really shocked that this mess of a paper, I don't know, you must have been about fourth grade or fifth grade, was so gripping. It just, you could see the horses running over the not Siberia, Mongolia. I mean, it was really interesting. And we just thought, he can write, he just can't write. I mean, he can, so maybe that journalism was really early.
Well, and the look, writing is a series of skills. Some of them are technical, and some of them are storytelling based. Some of them are the ability to put a sentence together. And it's possible to have sort of like 75% of them. And some of them are learnable and some of them are much harder to learn. I've never really learned to spell, but I've memorized the spelling of an enormous number of words. And so, it doesn't matter very much unless I have to write lamb prosciutto in a poll on in lieu of fun, and then how many I just haven't memorized the spelling of that. And so when that came up the other day, I was like, I don't know how to spell lamb prosciutto. And that's a really compensable deficiency. What's not a compensable deficiency is to not know what words sound good together.
Hmm.
That's a much harder skill to learn.
I
Anyway,
uh,
if that's my mom's idea of an embarrassing story, I can live with it.
I have a really good follow-up question, which is related to the point about Ben being very different from both you and your husband in terms of like writing and things like that. Um, are children really poorly designed clinical trials?
They're not randomized. They
Exactly.
come out who what they are. They're so much. It amazed me, and I'm sure it amazes everybody who has children how different children are from each other. I mean, Ben was always interested in lots of things, but it was just not school.
Yeah. Okay, so we have our next question. Let's see. Uh, Claudia Elkin asks, does one sign up as a trial volunteer subject? It's a good question.
Um,
Turn your volume down.
it um, if you live, just read. There'll be ads. Well, I don't know whether you read whether there are newspapers anymore, but there are lots of ads when a trial is going on. A clinical trial is going on. There'll be radio ads. There'll be television ads. There'll be posters. There'll be pictures in buses. We don't go in buses anymore. So there'll be lots of opportunities. If you're living in a place that has a university, look at the websites of the university. There's often requests for people, or go to clinicaltrials.gov, and that's a list of all the trials that are going on in the U.S. and lots in Europe, and look up. If you have a specific disease, look up that disease. If you want to prevent something, look up what the disease you want to prevent. If you have a condition of some kind, look it up, and there may very well be a trial. It's really, really important for people to sign up for these. It's how we learn.
Yeah.
And so, do try to do that. That would be great.
So I love this question from Tony Cava, and I'm also very interested in your answer to this. Can you tell us anything about your experience as a woman in STEM, like science, technology, engineering, and math back in the day? Says Tony.
Oops. So I can answer this in two very different directions. I can answer it in a really positive direction and say that I was very fortunate to have a grandfather, a father, a husband, all of whom were really encouraging to me. I also had a thesis advisor who was really encouraging, and so there were lots of men in my life. And then when I taught at Hunter College, and I used to bring the kids to the office, the men in the department said, if Janet can do it, we can do it too. So there's all that positive reinforcement that really helped. But then there are all kinds of awful stories I can tell you. And I will tell you one from graduate school, but I could tell you lots, where every week we had a seminar. My PhD was at Harvard in the Harvard Stat Department. And we had a seminar, and the seminars were very technical and really hard to understand, even if you got there in the beginning. But my job as the girl was to prepare the tea and coffee and the cookies and to clean the dishes. So every week I would go out and get the cookies and I put them on a tray and I prepare the coffee and I prepare the tea, and then everybody would go to the seminar and I would have to clean the dishes. So I would come late to the seminar, and the first question from the chairman was always to me. Ask a question. and I could never answer it. I don't know that I could have answered it had I been in the beginning, but I knew I couldn't answer it at the end when I didn't hear the beginning of the course. And finally, one of my fellow students said, "Why do you do that to her? You make her wash the dishes, you make her come late, and then you ask her the question." Yeah, Kate, I see your face. Yeah. So I have lots of stories like that. But in general, because I had such good support from so many men, and I had lots of so you all know Jordan Ellenberg, but I had two Ellenberg friends who were Jordan's parents, and Susan Smith, whom I knew first as Susan Smith before Susan Ellenberg, and Jonas. They were wonderful friends. Judy Goldberg. So I had a group of women friends that we were together. So it was both.
God, geez. Like, that's just the, like, I mean, I thought you were actually going to say, and I thought the story might actually be that you went to the seminar and you were in charge of like taking notes for everyone or something, or like being like the secretary, not like the actual literal like catering service and then maid. And so like that, like kind of, I mean, none of that would have been good, but like, yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. Tony says, thank you for sharing that story. And yeah, I mean, it's just, my mom has similar
She has
stories.
a lot. She has a lot of stories like this that could fill up, including her initial meeting with her department chairman as a graduate student, where he explained to her the fate of women in prior women in the department. But I actually, there's another story that is very deep in my memory, which, you know, when I was a small child, this was when my mom was teaching at Hunter, and I knew she taught at Hunter. I knew she was a professor, but I did not. I didn't have any sense of her research or work because I was 5 or 6 or whatever. And one of my enduring memories of my mother from that period is being at the playground. And I mean, this must have happened 500 times. And she would always be sitting on a bench with a folder, and the folder was her work. And whenever I would ask her what she was doing, she would say, "Oh, I'm working on a paper." And I can even tell you like the names of co-authors of papers. Like, this is how I know the name Agnes Berger. And it was not until I was an adult and I first had occasion to look at my mother's CV that I realized how many papers there were that she was publishing in that period of time. And I had the perception she was my mom at the playground, But this is, if you look at her CV in the period from the sort of mid-70s to the early 80s, this was a very significant, large body of work that's important in the field. And, that was that folder. That was like my paper that I'm working on with Agnes Berger, or, somebody else whose name is not coming to me right now.
Hold on.
Sorry. Wait, let me unmute you. You're not unmuting properly. Wait, I've silenced my mother by accident. No, nobody can hear you, Mom.
It's because you're a woman.
Yeah. Can you unmute yourself? Because I can't unmute you all of a sudden. If you go up to the, nobody can hear you, including me. If you go up to the top of your screen, can you click toggle mic? Uh-oh. Silenced because she's a woman. All right.
I'm gonna
knock. I'm going to knock you out of the screen and bring you back in.
Okay. So I'll tell the story while you're doing that of my mother, who was a judge, and my dad also eventually became a judge, in a lower court than my mom, but a judge nonetheless. But for a while, one of the things that I remember, and my mom kept her maiden name. And for a long time when envelopes got, and I think still until like my entire life, envelopes would get addressed to Mr. to like what was it? It was like the Honorable Tom Clonic and wife or something, even though my mom was the one who was the judge. And so this would happen like all of the time. Or like my favorite, I think it was like honorable, the Honorable Tom Clonic. Yeah. Anyways, it was just like they would just always get it wrong. Like they would either drop her honorific entirely or they would give it to my dad. And that happened for like almost all of the invitations to the house at various points.
Well, I cannot unmute my mother even now. So
oh, no.
all questions for the next 2 minutes until we wrap have to be yes or no questions that she can answer with a yeah, exactly. Okay, Kate. Okay. Go for it.
I'm going. Okay. Let's see. Oh my God, these are not yes or no questions. In a yes or no answer, can you answer Joel Woodward's question? How does distribution modeling affect time immunization density to herd immunity? I'm joking. You'll have to do it later. Oh, John Bordeaux has asked for a poll. We should. I feel terrible. Okay, I'm gonna try. Janet, go take your mouse and go to the top of your screen where your face is, and just like above it, a little screen should bop down, right? And then all the way over on the left, there should be a little microphone. Is it toggled? Is it red? It's red?
It's red, and it won't toggle off for me, and it won't toggle off for her. She is silenced. I think God is sending us a sign that we should wrap the show.
Oh my God, oh God, your mom is so cute. This has been so much fun, and she's like very cute and exceptionally smart and like very good at explaining complicated things. They had to
stop the whole show to stop her. All right. We're going to wrap up. Thank you, Mother. Oh, we have a poll demanded of us. So who?
Should Ben's mom come on again?
Okay. Well, that's.
No. Well. Okay.
That's everybody's going to just say yes.
Say yes.
Come
that's
on.
True.
That's
okay. That's true.
Maybe my dad should come on and talk about cancer. Should Kate's mom come on?
Oh no, screw you, Ben. No, absolutely not. That's nice. You can't get in touch with her without me. So we can get someone else's parents to come on the show. Oh, I know a yes or no question. Are you John Turk's sister?
Oh, yes.
We had him on earlier. That was excellent.
Isn't it great. Surprising that for those of you who remember episode 8 of In Lieu of Fun, would you have predicted that John Turk and Janet Wittes are in fact not only siblings but like really close?
Yeah, that's really great.
Like,
I could kind of predict it.
Improbable. So yeah, and there's another brother too. Maybe we should have Danny on. We could do the whole Turk kid troika. All right, Kate, overwhelming vote in favor of having your mom on the show. We will just leave that to you to contemplate, and the polls are non-binding.
I'm aware.
All right. Tomorrow it is just us. And by the way, I just want to point out that we have here accomplished the dream of every teenager, which is to actually silence your parents.
Yeah.
Like every teenager in the world wants the power that we have just administered inadvertently.
Oh my God.
Yeah, they can rage in.
Oh yeah. Catherine Maddox says free Janet, and I think that should be our first in lieu of fine piece of merchandise.
All right. Tomorrow is just us. Sunday is mystery guest day, right?
Yeah, but it's your turn.
It's my turn.
Yes.
All right. So, and then
Andrew, we are going to have him on next week, I think, but we'll talk about it tomorrow. Anyway.
All right. And until then, we don't have fun anymore. But in lieu of fun, you can put your mother in like a box, a glass box, where she can wave her hands and laugh and scream, but you can't hear her. Bye, Mom. Thanks for joining us.
I will come on if we can do this to my mother.
Well,
for the whole thing. That sounds great to me. That sounds fine.
Sorry about the tech glitch, Mom, and we'll have you back. We'll have you back the next. You should come back for like clinical trials updates when there are important clinical trials developments.
Yeah, vaccine. Get the vaccine. Got it. Everyone will volunteer. Okay, bye everybody.
All right. See you later.
Bye, Janet. So nice.